Welcome back to the passive speaker tutorial. In the last video we looked at the front panel here and we assembled everything together and we have a working passive speaker. Now the hazard of this passive speaker at the moment is that it will work functionally as it should do with a phone sitting in this section here. However, it will be top heavy and likely to topple. There is not a lot of base support on it. So we need to add something to stop it toppling forward or backwards. To do that, we're going to add some pieces on the side here. They're not going to be big, but they'll give it some structure and we're going to try and make it look a little bit nicer as well. So we can make the same piece twice, or I can show you a little trick to do it once and then duplicate it over. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a new component. We're in passive speaker. That everything is assembled, a whole document is active, I can make a new component safely. So we're going to call this side 1 and press OK. Now we are going to create a sketch, and every time so far we've looked at the same plane. I'm going to switch around and look at a different plane just so we can see the dimensions of the side of our passive speaker. I'm going to do my work over here. I can use this if I need to measure anything. I can see it. So I'm going to start off with a rectangle. We know I like the center rectangle tool, so I'll use my center rectangle tool and I want a height of, I'm going to say 35. I think half the height of the total speaker there, and I'm going to do a width of 76. This is just a bit wider than it is higher. Now, with these dimensions here, if I was to bring that over to here, I can click and drag it. It will fit in about there, and it's got a nice little overlap there. Now, so we now need to make it look a bit nicer. I could extrude that, stick it on the side, and it would work, but it wouldn't look very nice. In fact, let's do that just to see how it looks, and then we can go back and I can show you how we can modify it. So I'll finish my sketch. I'll extrude it 12mm thickness of our material. I'm going to press the joint button, and I'm going to join from the center bottom to the center bottom of this one here. Okay, if I was to do that, technically that on both ends would work, but it doesn't look very good. In fact, it looks bad, let's be honest. Another aspect of it, this corner bit here would block sound from that speaker hole. So, yep, it's not very good. So we are going to activate side 1, and down the bottom here we've got our history. First we made a sketch, then we extruded it. Well, now I'm going to right click on our sketch, I'm going to press edit sketch, and here I can make adjustments. So I'm going to draw a line. I'm going to make this a construction line, and I'm going to do a random part along here. I'm not at the center point, avoid that. I'm going to do it down here just so I avoid the center point. And notice how where I'm joining up to, it's got the right angle symbol, so I know I'm at a nice right angle. It also says on the line 0.0 degrees. I'm now going to come off of construction line, go to my sketch dimensions, and I'm going to dimension those two parts there. I want them 15mm apart because that's where I'm going to do my angle from. So I'm going to click there and I'm going to go up to here. It doesn't actually matter where it is I go to because I'm going to change that in a second. I'm going to do the same on this side. I'm going to do a completely different angle. It looks wrong, but I can use my sketch dimension tool to first click that line, and second click this construction line and click here. I want to change that to 45 degrees. I'm going to do the same here. Click on the line once, click on the other reference line, click for my angle and press 45 degrees. That's the new profile I want. But I do have this bit here. Now, if I just press finish sketch and I go back to my main document. Now, what's happened here unintentionally, where I had this selected and I moved the timeline back and forward again, it hasn't updated the timeline fully because in the main part of I've got my timeline here, I have a joint. I wasn't able to go back. So you can see that nothing's actually changed. I drew those extra lines in, but nothing's changed. The reason nothing has changed is because the total profiles were all selected. I've created profiles within the first one. If I right click on that extrude feature here, and I can do it from the main history, I don't have to go back into that component. I can right click, edit the feature, and you can see, I spin around from the other side especially, that because that main rectangle is already selected, the new profiles that are formed within it have been selected by default. I can deselect them just by clicking on each of them once, and you can see that's the new profile I get. And now that is the new foot or support or side piece that I've created there. I think that looks a lot better already. Just by taking off those corners, it looks so much better. Now, you might want to do things something different to yours. You might want to do a lot of different things. A nice addition to it could be raising these, lowering these down a bit to have a little bit of distance. If you want to do that, you can go back into that joint. You can right click on it, edit the joint, and a great feature about Fusion is I can click and I can just drag. I could raise that 5mm off the ground. And there it is. That's done. Now, some people would now just either mirror this or they'd copy and paste it across. The problem with copy and pasting, and the big reason I didn't use it for these parts here, is because if you make changes to one of them, it automatically changes all of them. You have to be very, very careful with that. So I like to have separate components. But what you can do is you can click on it, right click and copy. And you make sure that you are not selected. Nothing here is selected. I've clicked several times on my main white background. Nothing is selected. I'm going to right click. I'm not going to press paste because that will do exactly what I don't want it to do. I'm going to press paste new. This creates a duplicate version of it. And it's not linked to the other one at all. I'm going to move it well out of the way over there. So all I'm doing there, by the way, if you've not ever done this before, it's pasted in on top of the original. I can use these arrows to move it. I'm just going to click and drag and drop it there. It doesn't matter where I put it. I could have put it up here. It wouldn't have made a difference. I'm now going to use my joint and I'm going to join the bottom of that to the bottom of this one. And if you remember correctly, I lowered it down by 5mm just to make it sit a bit higher. If you're ever playing around with these adjustments, the closer you are, the finer your adjustments. By going even closer, I can get to 0.1mm adjustments. Whereas if I zoom quite far out, like this, I'll get big adjustments. So, go in there, 5mm. And actually, I quite like that. I wasn't intending this for my design choice, but I quite like having it raised up a little bit. I think that looks very, very good. Gives it a bit of extra style. So, that is how to put the sides on. And just to prove that these two are completely independent, I'm going to add a chamfer. So if I go to modify and chamfer on this edge here, it's just going to take a chunk off of it, but it's not happened on this one over here. And that's really, really important. I'm going to undo that. I didn't want it on there in the first place. But if this one here was a copy of this one, then it would have appeared on that one there, and it would have appeared on this edge specifically. So we have to be very, very careful of that. Now, before we go any further, I'm going to right click here and I want to rename, because this is not side 1 brackets 1. This is side 2. You never know, we might do different things with them. Okay. I'm going to save that. And the last thing I'm going to show you on here is how we make it look a bit more realistic. I've saved my work first. I'm going to press the button A for appearance. Now in appearances, we've got a lot of different appearances. These are in Fusion appearances. They come as standard. Now, if you want a color on it, you could just go to paint and you could say, I would like a glossy paint. And oh look, there is a nice green here. You have to download the color. It takes a few seconds. I can click and I can drag and I can make that front surface a nice bright green. I don't like that myself, and that's not what we're going for here. I'm just going to press Ctrl Z to undo that. Back to appearances. I don't want glossy paints. I would like wood, because we're going to make this out of plywood. Now, there is not a plywood in here, unfortunately. That is a thing I've wanted them to add for a long time, but they haven't. So we're going to go with, I think, a standard wood, probably pine. I think pine is closest to what we're going to be looking at. I think we'll probably use a softwood pine in the workshop anyway. So I can click and drag on pine and it goes on there. Now what you can do is you can adjust the appearance of that still further by right clicking, editing it, and often it's just the scale you want to adjust. So maybe like that. You go too far, and that is similar to how a sheet of softwood pine might look, but this is nowhere near that big. So I'd say probably about that. That looks good. I can now click and drag that same one I've just edited onto all of my pieces. Now you have to do it onto all of them. Could try doing it onto the whole design. There you go. I've put it on passive speaker up there. Remove appearances applied to this body. You try remove. There you go. Everything's got the same one applied. That made life a bit quicker, didn't it? That. And now it looks a bit more realistic. And on the back there, look, I like the way you've got a few knots on there. I like the fact that because we've drawn this in the correct planes and orientations, the grain is going top to bottom on these ones. If I hide the front pane, all of these have got the grain going top to bottom. Now in reality that wouldn't actually happen, but it's a bit of shows you consistency. And there we go. And because this one's on the side, and we drew these in that orientation, where this grain is going left to right, this grain is going left to right as well. So some of the things that Fusion does, pretty clever. That is, in essence, our passive speaker. Now in the next set of videos we're going to look at how we can do some rendering with this. And that's to make it look realistic. We're going to look at how we can do technical drawings with this. So we've got dimensions, so we can follow those dimensions in the workshop. And we're going to look at some modifications and alterations. The modifications and alterations will be in the next video. Okay, good luck.